Good afternoon, guys. So it's actually the same day as the end of the last video, but we're going to start a new video, and this one's going to be about cleaning. So first thing I think we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and clean up the head gasket mating surface. That way we can get all that taped off before we start pressure washing. We're going to clean up the valley surface so we can get all that taped off, and I think that's about it. So then we're going to prep the engine block so we can degrease it and pressure wash it. So let's get to it. Alright, so we got the motor all stripped down, ready to be cleaned. Got the top taped off so we can try to keep some water out of there. Next thing we got to do is finish getting the head stripped down, which involves removing the valve springs because we're going to replace them, and the spark plugs. So got my little tool here for removing the valve springs. Got this from another guy's video. I can't remember the name, but if I can find it, I'll put the link in the description. But basically, it's just a piece of metal. I cut a tab out of big enough to fit the springs through. Screwed it all the way into where the rocker bolt goes, and we got a nut on top, and we're basically just going to tighten the nut until we can get the keepers out. And yeah, that should do it. So we're going to go ahead and give this a shot and hopefully get all these out. Hello again, everybody. Today's goal, we got everything stripped down, as in all the parts off of them. We got the heads all stripped down, valves out. Valve covers are dirty as hell. We're going to clean those. Valley cover, engine block. So today's goal is to get all of this cleaned. So let's get it rolled outside and start cleaning. Alright, so we got everything cleaned up. We got the engine block taped off pretty good again. I'm not really worried about this side because this is the back where the transmission mounts, so you're not going to see any of that. We are going to paint this whole side. We're going to paint this rib that goes across the top here because I don't think the heads cover that. And we're gonna not worry about the front either because eventually we're going to get a new water pump, so that'll make, you know, all that pointless to paint anyway. We'll go ahead and paint this and around some of that. We'll paint this whole side. We're going to paint this little spot here. And I think that's about it. I got some primer on the valve covers already. And you guys will have to wait and see what color I'm painting it because it's going to give you a hint on what color the truck's going to be. We got the engine block, the valve cover, and the valley cover painted. Here's the engine block. Just kind of painted that plain Jane black. Turned out pretty good. So I'm happy with it. Looks nice now. So what we got to do now is the heads. So the heads turned out pretty clean. But obviously we still got to do a little bit of cleanup around the gasket surfaces. So we're going to go ahead and start cleaning those, and after that, as soon as the rest of the parts come in, we'll be able to put it back together. Ooh. Valve covers turned out pretty nice. Valley cover turned out good. Everything's all cleaned up. So let's go ahead and go over the parts we got. LS9 multi-layer metal head gaskets. These are the exhaust manifold new bolts. These are my new knock sensors and gaskets and all that good stuff. Valley cover gaskets, exhaust gaskets, valve cover gaskets. Pack 1218 valve springs, which are good for a .600 lift, which will be perfect for the turbo cam we're eventually going to get, and head bolts. So we're going to go ahead and get stuff put back together. First thing we're going to do is put the valve springs back in. So I filmed this once already, but I'm going to film it again because I don't think the first time it turned out very good. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I installed my valve springs with a nice little tool I made out of like a $5 piece of metal. So here we got some valve springs. We already got it all set up here. So I put my seat back in, push the valve through, and then we're using a towel on the bottom side just to keep the valve up. You're going to sit the spring on top. You're going to put your retainer on. So what I got going on is this little piece of metal, and basically all we're going to do is this is going to sit right over top of my spring, and it's cut to, I don't want to say the perfect size, but it's cut to the size so that we'll be able to get the keepers in after we get the spring compressed. When you're compressing the spring, you want to try to keep the valve in the center of the spring as much as possible. If it's off a little bit, the cap does a good job of kind of centering it when you put the keepers in. So usually it works out pretty good, but what I've been doing is you want to kind of line it up more this way. So I have the valve kind of more towards the corner down here. You're going to crank this bolt all the way in, and then you're just going to start turning. I like to keep my fingers down here just to kind of help this stay where I want it. So we're going to go ahead and just start cranking this down. So now once you can see there's a groove in the top of the valve here. That's where the keepers need to sit. So once you can get that past there, you just kind of take your keepers and just kind of line them up here. And sometimes they're a little tricky to get on because they are small. So, but even if it kind of sits like that, it should be good. They are tapered, so you want to make sure the smaller end's facing down. And so you can see I got one just kind of sitting in there. But when we go to crank this valve up, see how it straightened it out? And then basically we're just going to loosen this back up. And the valve should center itself right in the keepers. The keepers will set. And there we go. And then we just take our screwdriver, loosen this, and you're good to go. So there's the valve spring all installed. Sometimes they don't go quite straight, but that'll probably straighten out the first time we go ahead and rotate the motor with the rockers on. But it's pretty close. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to put the other 7 in. The other head's already done. And then we'll, I don't know, get them put back on the motor, I guess. Alright, so we have all our valve springs installed on both heads. When I took these all apart, you basically do the same thing as when you're putting them in. But what I had to do was, after I compressed the spring with my tool, I took my magnet and I held it near the keeper so that they wouldn't fly away. And then I had to tap the bottom of the valve with a rubber mallet. And they all came out really easily. Not much force to get them, it's just the valves were getting stuck to the seats. So I don't think that's a big deal. I labeled and bagged all these parts according to where they were. So every single one of them went back in exactly where they were. The only thing that's different is the springs. So what we're going to do now is, I think we're ready to go ahead and mount the heads back on. So we're going to go ahead and get this all cleaned up again, give it a good final clean, and we're going to use our head gaskets and get the heads put back on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put our push rods in, we're going to put our rockers on. There is a sequence that you want to put these in. Basically, the way it goes is when you put the rocker arms on, you want the lobe on the camshaft to be completely not active, disengaged, I don't know what you want to call it, but you want the valve to be completely relieved when you put it on. So that you don't strip the rocker bolts. So there is a sequence. You turn the motor to top dead center, then you can torque some of them, and then you turn it 360 degrees and you torque the rest of them. You can look up that sequence. It'll be easier than me explaining it. So I'm basically just going to put them all in. It's probably going to take me a long time, but obviously we're going to use some movie magic. All right, and there we go. All the rocker arms are in. Both sides. Basically all I did here was, like I said, I just used that. Actually, I used a different method. What I did was I made sure I just did each cylinder individually, so I made sure this one was all the way down and put it on, this one all the way down, and just went down the line. I lubricated the trumbull bearings with Aerocroil oil, and then I put some assembly lube on both ends of this rocker. Probably not necessary since these are not like brand new rockers, but figured it couldn't hurt. So now we're going to go ahead and get the valley cover on and the valve covers on, and then we'll be pretty good. And there it is, guys. Completely reassembled. I cleaned off all these bolts too, obviously, before we put them in. We got all our open ports taped off. That way stuff doesn't fall inside. But yeah, it's good to go. That's going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed turning that junkyard looking piece of crap into this sweet looking engine block. And next we got to figure out our wiring harness, but we're going to save that for the next video. So stay tuned. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.